to another edition of That's the Leader. However, it is not just another edition. It is this very special edition of this program, which today looks at the impact of COVID-19 on the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, its nationals, and its residents. The number to call will be 466-5977. That is 466-5977. And we welcome listeners and viewers to the various media platforms, Kyssfm 102.5fm, Dr. Denzel Douglas Facebook page, and the Facebook pages of Dr. Terence True, the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party, Young Labour, and of course, Vision 2020. A rebroadcast of this program can be heard tomorrow Wednesday at 12 noon. And as usual, we hear first from the Right Honourable Dr. Denzel Douglas, political leader of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party and the former Prime Minister. Welcome, Dr. Douglas. Your statement.
Thank you, Rasmus. A very pleasant good evening to those who are tuning in, those who are at home, and those who are abroad by radio and by internet. In particular, my heart goes out to our citizens who are in the diaspora, who have been so severely impacted by the threat of the ongoing pandemic. And we hope to God that you are okay. I want to thank you once again for your interest in this program as we meet every Tuesday to discuss the issues that are of concern to us all. I would like to thank Kyssfm for once again providing this opportunity to broadcast this program on radio and internet. Tonight I speak to you at a time when so many of us are fearful and anxious about the looming threat of the coronavirus, COVID-19, and the impacts that it is already having on our nation. This is why I have convened a special panel of experts to examine the various dimensions of the issue. I am happy, therefore, to introduce our own very Dr. Norjen Wilson, who is a practicing medical doctor here in St. Kitts and Nevis for several years, and who, of course, is one of the family practitioners here in St. Kitts and Nevis. I am also pleased to have with us in studio Dr. Milton Whitaker, who is a chemist with a keen interest in herbal medicine. Dr. Whitaker is author of the book series Plants Around St. Kitts and Nevis, which describe the many plants around our twin islands that have medicinal value. Dr. Jensen Morton, District Medical Officer for Sandy Point and Old Road, and Medical Officer at the Poxon Medical Center. We also have joining us by telephone Dr. David Newton, Vice President of the Greenville Medical Center in New Jersey, with research interest in treating infectious diseases. Finally, we also have joining us also by telephone Mr. Oswald Thomas, Dr. Oswald Thomas, who is a family therapist, professor, and professor of behavioral nature. He has over 33 years of experience in mental health, counseling, and positive relationship building. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for accepting our invitation here to be with us on this program this evening. This program actually should have been a special program to look at the development that will take place under the next Gen SKN government, especially in the constituency number 6 capacity area, since this is the time when we are celebrating my 31 years in Parliament. However, we've decided to take this turn because of the impending danger that we face and the crisis that is looming. Now, I look forward to a really informative discussion as we sensitize the public on the various elements of this particular pandemic. Let us now begin, Erasmus, as you will engage the members of the panel.
Thank you very much, Dr. Douglas. Our first presenter is Dr. David Newton. He's an infectious disease specialist, and we invite him to give a synopsis as to what is coronavirus, what to expect when we fall ill, the signs and the symptoms, as well as what to do before calling the ambulance or a medical practitioner. Dr. Newton, welcome to Ask the Leader.
Thank you so very kindly. Can you hear me? Thank you for having me on your program, and I think it is a very prudent thing that you have come together and brought this cadre of experience to dialogue on this very pressing and urgent matter. So, to respond more precisely to your inquiry, what is the coronavirus? We do know that, and I'll just begin with some basics, that the coronaviruses are a special subset of viruses. These viruses use RNA instead of DNA as their genetic material. Now, this is important because in the modern age of biology in which we have come, RNA viruses are mostly feared because of their ability to spread rapidly and to cause death and disease. The reason behind this is that RNA is chemically unstable in nature and both in the lab, which is good for the coronavirus outbreak because of its instability. This makes RNA and the coronavirus more prone to damage. It is unstable. That is why it can be destroyed with alcohol, it can be denatured with the proper hand washing, and this is a good thing for populations of the world. Coronaviruses are covered in protein spikes, and they use these spikes to invade healthy cells. The coronavirus is called a novel virus simply because it is just a new virus. It is something new to our immune systems. We have never encountered this type of coronavirus before. So there is the COVID-19, which is a type of coronavirus. And in more layman terms, and we like to say, if I came to your home and you had a dog, and I asked you what type of dog you had, and you said you had a Rottweiler or a Pit Bull, it is the same as saying you have the coronavirus, but the type of coronavirus you have is the COVID-19. Now you ask, what should we do if we have encountered the coronavirus? Well, first of all, we don't panic because the statistical data is in our favor. Between 80 to 83% of those who are infected by COVID-19 will recover with very mild flu-like symptoms. So the first thing we do is accept the fact that we have it and don't panic. Some of the symptoms of the COVID-19 are similar to those of the flu virus. The regular annual influenza, you will have a cough, but it is a dry cough as opposed to a productive cough. You will have a fever. The fever in corona is not as high as the fever in the flu. The fever in the flu virus normally gets above 105 degrees Fahrenheit. You will have a sore throat. You may have a stuffy nose. Some people have GI symptoms of nausea, vomiting. Some may even have diarrhea. But the mild symptoms are similar to that of the influenza. However, in serious cases, of course, it can progress to pneumonia, and it can progress to aggressive immune response, which can cause multiple organ dysfunction syndrome and cause one to go quickly and rapidly. Only those who are immunocompromised and have other comorbidities. I hope I answered your question correctly.
Yes, you have begun to. What are the vitamins A, B, C, and D important to boost one's immunity? And is there a danger of overdosing?
Well, here's what we say. Because we know that there is no known cure for the treatment of this novel COVID virus, we treat it just the same way as we would in preparation for the regular flu. We make sure that you have a lot of warm fluids. We make sure that you have, you're not dehydrated, because the virus likes a cell that's dehydrated. It is from there that it can take over, it can infiltrate and start mutating. There are some vitamins that we recommend, apart from healthy lifestyles, for people as preventive measures or as measures to boost the immune system. Vitamin A, vitamin B6, vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin E, flavonoids, and zinc. These actually increase your immune response. Let me say this so that you understand what I mean by the immune response. When the body comes on the attack, there are basically four principles that are set into motion, and these are the four principles. One, they're tissue macrophages. These are the first line of defense where these cells will eat the pathogen. Then there is neutrophil invasion into tissue and into areas of infection. Then you have the monocyte invasion, and if that doesn't work, then the body is stimulated to produce more white blood cells, which are fighter cells. So when you look at the cadre of defense mechanisms we have, for tissue macrophages to be at their peak, vitamin D, we recommend vitamin D. And you should be consuming this between 10,000 international units a day, along with zinc, 50 to 100 milligrams per day. And warm fluids, of course, adequate rest. Warm fluids, because we know that the virus at the back of the throat does not like a certain temperature, because it becomes denatured and it's destroyed. So we even recommend that you gargle 2 to 3 times a day with warm salt water. The vitamin D, zinc, allows for macrophages to do a lot of their function in destroying these viruses. Because you live in an area where vitamin D is so abundant, we encourage about half an hour of sunlight, natural sunlight, not the dangerous rays when the sun is at its peak, but the healthy rays in the morning and in the evening for half an hour twice a day. So far as vitamin C is concerned, you should consume about 4,000 milligrams of vitamin C. Vitamin C allows for neutrophils to function better in invading areas where these viruses are located. You are to avoid sugars and dairy products, because they drop the immune system from 100% to about 30%, and it stays there for 1 to 3 days. So most people get sick and stay sick longer just because of their dietary practices. There are things known as flavonoids. Flavonoids also help the neutrophils to function well at finding and destroying these pathogens. Flavonoids are found in vegetables and in fruits, and we have these things naturally in abundance in our areas of the world. There are also immune response that are positive when you have the consumption of vitamin A. You should be taking vitamin A between 10,000 to 20,000 international units per day. Vitamin B6, pyridoxine, about 100 milligrams a day, and vitamin E, 800 milligrams a day. Now, and you did ask about an overuse of these. Most people are not getting these in the right quantity on a regular basis in the first place. But the vitamins that we caution about overusing are the vitamins A, D, E, and K. Okay? And with the numbers and the amounts that I just shared with you, you should be fine. We don't encourage pregnant women to use vitamin A on any level, and I'm sure your OBGYN will be keep telling you about that, because that can cause some problems with the developing fetus. But outside of that, those vitamins A, B, C, D, E, flavonoids, and zinc, together with warm water, a lot of fluids, adequate rest, and sunlight, are a good defense mechanism at keeping the immune system the way it ought to be in preparation to fight this.
Dosages have any effect on the persons who are hypertensive and also diabetic?
I did not hear that question. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that again, please?
Would persons who are diabetic and also hypertensive, would the vitamins you suggested have any effect on them?
These vitamins occur naturally in nature and in the foods that we eat, that we consume on a daily basis in our region of the world. So in that proportion that we suggest, with the exception of vitamin A for pregnant people, because it can cause some problems to the developing fetus, with the exception of that, one should be okay consuming those vitamins in that quantity, because you should be eating those vitamins in your daily food supply anyway. It is never the vitamin themselves that cause the problem. It is always the underuse or the overuse of these vitamins. So you should be fine with that.
That a elderly person or somebody, a parent, should look for in their elderly persons?
I did not understand the question. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you, but I'm asking you, what are some of the symptoms that persons should first look on elderly persons, or those who are likely to be affected?
Well, we do know from the studies we have out of China and from what we've seen, the global trend, that the people who are at risk most for the COVID-19 are our elderly, the people who have comorbidities like diabetes and high blood pressure, people who have respiratory problems, people who are immunocompromised, and I want to put a tag in there, especially smokers, because they already have lungs that are not functioning at its peak. So far as the elderly, remember we said the signs and symptoms of a COVID-19 infection are so similar to that of the regular flu that at first one may not be able to tell the difference. What we do know is that for COVID-19, in the elderly who progress from the mild cases to the severe cases, you are going to have shortness of breath. You're going to have frequent bouts of fever, and that shortness of breath soon leads to respiratory failure, because understand that this COVID virus, COVID-19 attacks the cilia of the lungs, and it also attacks the goblet cells. Goblet cells are known to produce mucus that helps to clean the lungs, and the cilia push this mucus along so that you can get the debris out of the lungs. For the elderly who have succumbed to this and have progressed to the severe and the critical states, you have fluid buildup in the lungs. So it makes for difficult breathing. And then there is rapid decline. So you want to look for someone who has the flu symptoms and who after 5 to 7 days is progressively getting worse with associated respiratory problems. Remember at first, and I should say this, the cough associated with the COVID is not a cough that produces mucus. So you might want to watch for that. It is a dry cough as opposed to a flu, which when you have a flu, you're going to have a moist cough, you're going to produce mucus and sputum. Either way, because the symptoms are so similar, we want to watch the progression into shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, and you want to initiate the medical systems so that you can get adequate help before too late.
Much, Dr. Newton, by telephone. Thank you very much for your intervention. We do appreciate it. Also with us is Dr. Norgin Wilson. Dr. Wilson, what are some of the structures that a well-oiled rapid response system should have?
Yes, Erasmus, thank you for having me here. Thank you for having me here. And what I really want to speak to the general public about is what individuals themselves should do if they feel they have been exposed. We will speak about rapid responses and so forth. That is really something which any government or health department or ministry should have in place. It really should not bother me as an individual. That is the duty of the ministry. They should have these things in place, and I trust that they're already in place. We have been looking at the television, we have been seeing how many countries are responding to it, and I think that it would be a flaw if we have not looked at the best practices so far. It does me no good by wondering if a healthcare provider is going to come to me. The ministry should have that in place. They should respond. What individuals must know is that if he or she feels that he or she has been exposed, and by exposed I mean if you may have been in contact with somebody who you suspect may have had the COVID-19, or you have traveled to an environment in which you may consider to have had significant numbers of persons who are affected by COVID-19. For instance, there are some persons who now may be coming out of some states in the US. There are some persons who have traveled to China through Japan, may have had reason to be in Spain or Italy, and might now be returning home and so forth. Now, Dr. Newton spoke about some of the symptoms and so forth, and he spoke about symptoms similar to a flu. I would say some persons may have runny nose, sore throat, fever. Difficulty breathing is important. You may see at the airports and so forth by all the news media that they are pointing these infrared temperature guns at the passengers who are arriving. That's just a quick way of making a quick body temperature reference. So you can actually pull someone and say, okay, then you should be followed up further just because of your body temperature and so forth. It's just a quick way of selecting persons who the health department may want to follow up on. Now, there are some persons who are at a high risk. The elderly, persons with respiratory illness, and by that I mean persons who may have asthma or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. There are some persons who may have cancer or diabetics. We have persons with heart disease, hypertension. We have persons with collagen vascular diseases such as lupus. These are persons who are at high risk. So if you're out there and you're hearing your disease mentioned, right away, hey, I have to take special precaution. Yesterday I saw a patient, an elderly gentleman, and he came to me and he said, Doc, nothing is wrong with me, but you know my condition, and I don't think I want to be in my work environment because I work around a lot of youngsters, and I think if anything happens, I might be the first to go. It does not mean because you might be exposed to COVID-19 that is a death sentence, but don't play naive or ignorant. You must understand what your condition is, and you must know how you're going to deal with it. So this elderly gentleman, he came to me and he said, I really don't think I should be there. I did an evaluation. The gentleman was fine, and we had a discussion. He understood. He told me he understood everything that he should do to try and protect himself. He understands that he's going to put some space between him and his co-workers. He has said to me, well, I've told him at least a meter. He said, I'll do 1.5 meters. No problem. Okay, so he's going to put at least that space between him and his co-workers. I asked him, how often does he wash his hands? And he says, well, you normally hearing as a child you grow up and you hear, wash your hands before you eat and so forth. Now that COVID-19 is there, we understand that we have to wash our hands a little more often, especially when you touch surfaces that other persons are utilizing. So the population needs to know that when you touch any surface that is not being used exclusively by you, you must wash your hands if someone else is touching or has touched that very same surface. So if you put your hands on the table and somebody else, somebody else's hands were there before, you go and wash your hands. I understand that we have a problem with hand sanitizers. You can walk with a bottle of pump soap, you can go to a pipe, find water. You can, just go to the bathroom and wash your hands with soap and water. So don't be alarmed because, the country appears to be running out of, hand sanitizer. Soap, the good old soap and water will do the trick. You could put a blue soap in a plastic bag and walk with it if you can't find anything sweet. Not a problem. So you just need to do basic, simple things. And these things were always around. This is not anything new to us here in the Federation. Soap and water has been there. The advice has always been the same. Wash your hands if you consider them to be dirty. Nowadays, we are not into the shaking of hands. You may clasp, you may bow, you may say hello. And I've always, what was not accepted long ago was the daps. It was not a formal meeting, but I think it would be pretty formal nowadays if you can just, or the foot bump, whatever, or the bow, as people may call it, or just say hail up, and that's fine, not a problem. But we have to begin now to learn that we don't need to do so much of these mushy hand signals and all of that, and wiping one person's germ, bringing it onto yourself. Okay, so a hello is fine, good morning is fine, above the head a nod, that's fine. Okay, this is what people need to know. Understand that this particular virus, as we know, at this particular point in time, it is spread through the droplets and so forth when whether someone sneezes, they cough, or even just simply exhaling. My wife, who is also a doctor, she said to me some nights ago, lying next to me, she said, I have some difficulty breathing, but she's an asthmatic. And then she went on to say, I wonder if it's COVID-19. So I was fully awake at 2:30 in the morning, wondering, she, in the environment in which we work, she could have been exposed. But, of course, one would not panic. One would just do what you ought to do, just monitor. Sometimes you have to review your day, review your days prior. Where have I been? Who may I have come into contact with? Did I travel? You go over these things in your mind. But do not panic, because panic ain't going to help you. Crying, not going to help you. And just because you see people on TV doing a lot of things, like a patient asked me yesterday, why a person's buying so much toilet paper? Well, I really don't know. You understand? Because I think that would be the least of your problems. I figure you should just buy food. You may not be able to come out. It would do you better if you buy something to eat if you have to stay inside, if it comes down to that. But the washing of the hands, it's important. Now, another observation which was made, a parent, 2 children, everyone is wearing gloves, but the children are touching everything, touching everyone, touching the bags, touching the face, doing everything. So it is not just because you hear people say put on gloves, and continue to do the same things that you do normally. That is not helping. You are to avoid, try as much as possible to avoid taking your hands to your face. The virus is received through the surfaces or through the orifice or the nostrils, the mouth, and so forth, the eyes. So you should try as much as possible to avoid putting your hands in your face. That's what you have to, if you have to put them in your pocket, keep them there. That might be a good thing. It's not nice, it's not polite to be talking to people with your hands in your pocket, but that might be a new thing to adapt. Keep your hands in your pocket. That way you would be absolutely certain that you're not touching anything, you know? And these are just little things that people can use common sense and go about their daily routine. Why should we be so concerned about the COVID-19? Because about 1 in every 5 persons who actually develop or is exposed or contracts the illness is likely to need some sort of hospital care. That's just the reality. But it does not mean that just because you contract COVID-19 that you're going to die. And I think that is on a lot of persons' minds. Remember, we said there are persons who are susceptible. There are persons who have to be on the lookout. And we have a very large diabetic population in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so these are persons in particular who needs to pay special attention. Keep away from the crowds. I was wondering, I've been hearing that, you know, some of our events are actually being postponed and so forth. And I would hope that, you know, we don't have large numbers of cases in St. Kitts, but it is just common sense to stay away from crowds. It is just common sense to wash your hands. It's just common sense that if you find that you develop flu viral symptoms, one of the things that you do, don't go into the hospital or the emergency room or into the doctor's office where everybody else might be seated for a different illness to sit among them. You call your healthcare provider, make a telephone call, explain to the healthcare provider what your symptoms are, what you're feeling. Is it a sore throat? Is it difficulty breathing? If they're not providing you with information as to what you should do, you should ask the question, can I come and see you at a particular time? Where do I go? Where should I report? When I get there, who should I ask for? What should I expect once I get there? Should I bring someone with me? These are things that you should ask. Once you get there, what can I expect? What will happen to me? Do I have to stay? When you get to your healthcare facility or your healthcare provider, then they now take over from there. If the healthcare providers see it fit to advance and do further testing, then it would be done, or it should be done. If they recognize that this is something which can be monitored at home, then you would be advised as such. But the system, the healthcare system in St. Kitts and Nevis should, once you come in contact with that, they should just take you through. It is not your problem how they're going to get it done. That is already worked out, or should have already been worked out. And so I would say it would be a major flaw if we have sat here for weeks upon weeks and look at what the rest of the world is doing and have not considered the best practices which are out there presently. I'm hearing that some of our neighboring islands have requested assistance from Cuba and so forth, and I think that assistance is being offered. We are not hearing a lot from our ministry, if anything, from our health ministries at the present moment, but I am hoping that soon and very soon we will have some information. So there are a lot of speculations, but do the common sense thing. Wash your hands. Keep your distance. If you yourself recognize that you're sneezing a little bit more often, or you're having difficulty breathing and so forth, call your healthcare provider. Call a doctor. Don't just show up and sit down with everybody in the room. Call before you go. Let them explain to you what you should do. When you get there, they will take over. No problem. Yes, some nights ago I heard someone ask about, what about these guns, these infrared guns that they're using at the airport and so forth to check and so forth. Yes, this is just a quick way to reference body temperatures. And so...
Show yours.
Well, I have one here, of course. I am not seeing many of them around, but it's just a very quick way to get body temperatures, and we can determine, hey, do I do further follow-up with you, further testing and so forth. So what usually happens is when persons come into the office from time to time, we'll go out and take everybody's temperature just to make sure that there isn't anyone that we have to pull, pull aside and deal with them in an expeditious manner and so forth. But it is about doing the common sense thing and not panicking. And in my opinion, it will be a good idea to store sufficient food at home and to have soap and water. Don't worry so much about not having hand sanitizer. Don't worry about that. Don't get caught up in it. Because the simple basic ways which have always existed, they're still there. It's just that we have to now pay close attention to it. And a smart thing to do, I would say to everyone who opens up the pipe or the cork on public pipes, you should always have napkins to dry your hands when you're finished, and use that same napkin to turn off the pipe. Not turn it off with your bare hands, because you might be, once again, inoculating germs onto your hands. So it is always good to have your own napkin. Okay? So I hope that this has been helpful. I know we don't have much time, but feel free. I'm sure anyone from the panel, you might be able to call and ask some questions and so forth. And I understand that it's a new virus, and we will be updated accordingly. But simple basic things have worked in the past, and they continue to work. So don't be alarmed. I can imagine that persons are just concerned that what's happening at our borders, if you're not seeing it. And I'm certain, I trust and hope that these things are put in place soon, because if it is that they're not there yet, there is not much that you or me can do about it. That's the responsibility of the administration at the Ministry of Health.
Thank you very much, Dr. Norton.
You're most
Wilson.
welcome.
With us also is Dr. Jensen Morton. Dr. Morton, welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening again.
So, just going to speak a bit on how ready the Federation right now is to address the impact of this virus. So, the opening statement is going to have to be the truth. It's very difficult. It will be very difficult for any country. If you look at the news, you would see that the wealthiest nations in the world and the wealthiest continent on earth, Europe, it's being heavily hit right now, and they have lots of resources available to them, and it's still been very, very difficult for them. So just looking at that, it should be evidence that the COVID-19 situation is not one to take lightly, and it's one in which even when you have lots of resources available to you, it's something that's very difficult to manage. So what St. Kitts and Nevis has been doing thus far, well, first of all, we've been lucky thus far because we don't have any confirmed case at the moment. But the reality is that practically every single territory that's around St. Kitts and Nevis has confirmed cases, and a lot of these are places in which, for example, Antigua, multiple flights per day, to and from. So that just gives us the indication that even though we don't have a confirmed case, we still have to act as though there is some case out there that just has not been confirmed as yet. So we still have to take all of the safety precautions, even if we don't have it written up with evidence, etc. What we've been doing is that we've been trying to address it from the angles of, since it's something that has to be imported to come here, it's about port security, it's about ensuring that our health system in terms of the actual health infrastructure and things like that are in place, as well as the training is in place and staff are in place. So with regards to border security, from a while ago, the workers that are at the airport and all of the ports of entry, they got their training sessions and they were put on the alert as to what needs to be done. Apart from that, health personnel have been dispatched to especially the airport when it was time. Bit by bit, as more and more countries become more and more severely affected, flights from those countries to St. Kitts and Nevis have been restricted bit by bit. So that's something else which started happening. But despite all of this, one of the issues has really been what to do with persons that might be coming from, like they're a national, and they're coming from a nation that's not strongly impacted, even though they're impacted, like some of the neighboring islands that have 1 or 2 cases. Some of those people are still coming to the Federation, and they are not really being screened or followed aggressively. That is probably the main issue, and if a case is to come up, that probably would be where it comes from. I think a lot of people are on the alert for the UK, China, etc., because a lot of countries got their cases from those places. But I don't think many people are thinking about the neighboring island thing. Just yesterday, I was speaking with a group of people, and one of them had just come on a flight on Friday from the United States Virgin Islands. And the USVI has 2 confirmed cases. She just came on the flight. She's not quarantined or anything, she's walking up and down the place. In some countries, such as if you're entering Cuba or Taiwan and you are entering and you're coming to stay for a prolonged period of time, they always quarantine you. They always give you 10 to 14 days in which they check everything, they test for everything, they see if you're going to develop a fever, etc. And it's a habit that some nations have just ingrained upon them, whether they have a disease outbreak or not. And now when you see the coronavirus spreading to various countries, you're realizing that the amount of spread of that virus in a place like Taiwan, which is right next to China, Taiwan hardly has any cases. Just because from a very long time ago, they were practicing very good habits in terms of quarantine and border security, and they've just amped it up a little bit, but it was already very good. In terms of the hospital setting, we have protocols in place currently. We went through a few things, and we do have systems in place, but they are still actively being worked on. So if you went to Jeddah, for example, you would see some things being done in and around the area. So we're trying to, as time goes on, we're still trying to perfect things, but there are things under protocol, like I said, in place, such that if somebody comes in and they have the symptomatology, that there is something that we can do. And as time passes, we try to perfect the system and have more and more things readily available. In terms of the staffing, the staff themselves have been made aware of the coronavirus, and things have been made available to the staff at the hospitals and health centers. For the most part, we have lots of what we need, for the most part. We recently got some more of the testing kits because that was an issue a few days ago. So we recently got some of those, and we're going out to use those now. But in terms of the major one, which people aren't speaking about, even though this is a health-based illness, even though this is a health-based issue, excuse me, the economic impact of all of this is what I'm not really hearing that much about. Because when you're going to be grinding certain areas and industries to a halt, and you're going to have an end of the in-stream of revenue, that is probably going to be one of the greatest things to impact your nation. So even though it's good to ensure that the citizens don't become affected because of that whole aspect of you don't want them to become ill, you don't want them to become, you don't want them to pass away, etc. You also have to be thinking about the long-term and short-term economic impacts of it. And it would be nice if a little bit more attention is given to that. Just, was this morning? Your address.
Yes, this morning.
Yes, just this morning. I've heard some very
this
good...
Afternoon.
This afternoon.
Early this afternoon.
There were some very good suggestions from the address from Dr. Douglas, because it looked at it on a whole, not just the health-based aspect of it, but also to say, speaking about workers, caring for workers, thinking about persons and how they're going to be able to survive and make ends meet if they're asked to go home. Many countries have curfews in place. Many countries have restrictions in terms of movement and social distancing in place. And even though we don't have a case, and you really don't have to aggressively enforce social distancing until you get a confirmed case, just because of the reality of coronavirus and how it could be dormant for so long, and incubation period 4 to 28 days, average human coughs like 10 to 30 times a day, whether they're infected or not. So you could be, because of that, it might be wise to gingerly start to encourage persons to have a small scale type of the social distancing before we get into the more aggressive stuff for now. In terms of the frontline workers, if you're a frontline worker and you want to protect yourself, like myself and the other frontline workers, it's actually something that's very difficult, and it's something that we've been thinking about all the time, because a lot of people that work in healthcare in countries that are affected have become infected, many have passed away. A lot, for whatever reason, a lot of persons that have really important positions in healthcare in some countries have been affected and sometimes passing away. The medical chief for the northern part of Italy got infected and passed away. Multiple ministers in Iran, I don't know if they had a meeting and one of them was infected, but multiple ministers got infected and some of them passed away. And some key doctors have passed away, key nursing personnel passed away. So because of that, as a frontline worker, you see the news, you get a little bit scared. But even though that's the case, that's just the nature of the job, and you have to try to do whatever you can do to protect yourself. There are masks available, so you have to know that when someone comes with the symptomatology, you follow the proper protocol in terms of the mask, gloves, PPE if necessary, washing regularly, distancing yourself from people that look as though they're infected, that have fever and cough. You can do your own part. Just have your little distance of personal space until you can get some more information. Sterilize the environments as much as you can, wipe down surfaces as much as you can, etc. So these things would be dependent on the amount of resources available. So that's probably going to be the biggest challenge. If you know that you're supposed to be changing certain things regularly, but at the same time, you only have X amount available. That's when it becomes a bit of a juggle. Right now, it's not that much of a juggle, but it can easily become that because of the decrease in shipment and the fact that we don't make these things. And also, every country in the world is trying to get these things actively and aggressively. And if it's that we have a shortage of them and we're trying to get them, it just might not be available. So it's a bit of a give and take in terms of its difficulty. But as Dr. Wilson said, one of the good ways in which the frontline workers can be protected is if you just give us a heads up. If you have the combination of the fever and the cough, excuse me, oh my goodness. If you have the combination of the fever and the cough, that you just call ahead of time to whichever medical facility that you're going to, such that we can know what to expect and that we can put you in the specified room or area that we have, and that we can also put on the specified gear. If you are grossly symptomatic and you need medical assistance, you will be isolated. If you need medical assistance and attention, you will be isolated in a designated area in the hospital in that case. If it's just that you are mildly symptomatic, then that is when we'll have a specific protocol for that as well. But you will have to be officially swabbed and tested in those areas. And for that to be done, it's best if we have on the full PPE gear. So you call so that we know, as he said, you don't go into the general area coughing or touching up everything, because you may have coughed before you came and then you touch up everything. You're taken to that area, everybody is wearing the proper gear, we can swab you, we can send it off, and then everything else comes into place. They have designated vehicles to transport when it's time, and designated areas for keeping particular people. Some already there, some in the process of being made. In terms of the business, just that.
We'll come to that, but I think it's time to hear from Dr. Milton Whitaker, a herbalist. Dr. Whitaker, what are some of the plants and remedies that would boost our immune system to stave off this virus?
Good evening, listeners. Thanks for inviting me, Dr. Douglas and Erasmus. Good evening. Before I get into how you can enhance your immune system, I know that there's quite a number of persons in St. Kitts and Nevis who, on a daily basis, would have some bush tea. And although in fact some of their practices have not been scientifically proven, culturally some of these practices have actually benefited the people who imbibe or even eat them. It's interesting that when I was invited to this meeting, I was actually reading an article on the Chinese situation, and it was reported that during the outbreak, some 60,000 persons were actually treated not only with Western medicine, but also with traditional medicine. And it also reminded me that one of the malarial drugs of great renown, artemisinin, was actually derived from wild wormwood, which is a plant. I mean, I haven't seen it around here for quite some time, but I believe that it is there. Now, WHO has actually come on board and endorsing the traditional medicine in healthcare. Now, because the COVID-19, in a sense, is new and you don't really have a proven therapy, well, one can continue the practices of teas. Dr. Newton, in his presentation, mentioned flavonoids. And most of these plants actually have flavonoids in them. They're usually, and even fruits for that matter, they're usually the colored ones. And he mentioned zinc. Well, there are a lot of pumpkins around at the moment. And you can find zinc in the pumpkin and specifically in the pumpkin seeds, so maybe people should resort to eating more dried pumpkin seeds. And I noticed in my hike the other day that this is actually guava season for your vitamin C. And there have been studies which have indicated that the guava leaf tea, for that matter, enhances your immune system, increasing your red platelet count. And so one, in a sense, can boost their immune system by having the teas and the fruits. And at the same time, a number of persons have said that they have a high temperature and modern medicine doesn't take it down. Well, what about our celebrated cattle tongue, for that matter? And I journeyed to Mansion on the weekend because one of my grandchildren the mother wanted some cattle tongue for one of the children. And there are quite a number of plants in the Mansion area. And yesterday I ran into a farmer in Forest and asked him, well, where can I get some cattle tongue if I need to rush and not have to go up to Mansions? And on the Brotherson side, which is an area that I used to go as a youngster, apparently have quite a bit. So I would say that there is a role for traditional medicine. I don't know if the young medics will have imbibed that, but I'm certainly the older people, including myself, will be quite accustomed to the lemongrass tea in the morning. And certainly the Germans have proved that passion fruit leaves are actually very good to calm you, especially in these anxious times. So get out and get your bush. You may not know the bush, but you can ask a farmer, or maybe through the agriculture department, one of the field workers would be able to point you to the bush. Make sure you don't overdose yourself. Check with your doctor if you're uncertain. But there is a role traditionally for traditional medicine. And if you want to go a little further, you can actually get this book and Plants Around Us, part 1 and part 2.
And raise it to
And
0.
they're actually in color, so you don't have to go through all of this black and white and be very uncertain about the plants. And I think the photographs are quite good, even if I took them myself.
Thank you very much, Dr. Whitaker. We'll be opening the phone lines in a moment,
Sure.
reminding you also that you're listening to a special edition of Ask the Leader, which tonight looks at the impact of COVID-19 on the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Dr. Douglas?
Right. Well, do we have anyone on the line?
Thomas. Okay. All right. Good. We have Dr. Thomas with us, and he's a therapist. Dr. Thomas, how would people cope with the stress and the anxiety of being in a crisis situation, not only in St. Kitts and Nevis, but also the rest of the world?
Well, normally, good evening, I should say, to the panel and to Dr. Douglas for inviting me, and to the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Normally, when there's an infectious outbreak, such as the one that we are dealing with, people may feel a sense of anxiety and show signs of stress. Even if the outbreak is not at home but are abroad, people still have some worry for their loved ones who live in that part of the world. It is important for folks to, in the wake of this outbreak, to monitor their own physical and mental health. Know the signs of stress in yourself as well as your loved ones, and know how to relieve those stress. Some of the signs you will find in terms that your stress would be behavioral, physical, emotional, and cognitive responses that are all common signs of anxiety and stress. So, for instance, in your behavior, you will notice an increase or decrease in your energy and activity levels. You will also notice an increase in your alcohol, tobacco use, or use of illicit drugs. An increase in irritability with outbursts of anger and frequent arguing. Having trouble relaxing or sleeping. Crying frequently. Worrying excessively. Wanting to be alone most of the time. Blaming other people for everything. Having difficulty communicating or listening, having difficulty giving or accepting help, inability to feel pleasure or to have fun. Now, in your body, because stress also has a physical manifestation, and stress and anxiety can compromise your immune system. So you may find in your body you are having stomach aches or diarrhea, having headaches and other pains. You're losing your appetite or eating too much, sweating or having chills, getting tremors or muscle twitches, being easily startled. In your emotion, you will notice in your emotion that you're being anxious or fearful, feeling depressed, feeling guilty, feeling angry, feeling heroic or invaluable, not caring about anything, feeling overwhelmed by sadness. In your thinking, because there's a thought process to this as well, you are having trouble remembering things, feeling confused, having trouble thinking clearly and concentrating, having difficulty making decisions. And so these are some signs that you would notice that you've been having. Now, one of the things you have to do in managing and alleviating your stress, you have to take care of yourself. So you set limits on how much time you spend reading or watching news about the outbreak. You will want to stay up to date on the news of the outbreak, particularly if you have loved ones in places where many people have gotten sick. But make sure to take time away from the news to focus on things in your life that are going well and that are under your control. It is good to find people and resources who you can depend on for accurate information. So it is therefore, whether it's government, whether it's nurses, whether it's the Ministry of Health or whoever, make sure that the information that you're getting is accurate information. Now, keeping yourself healthy is very important. You eat healthy foods and drink water. Avoid excessive amounts of caffeine and alcohol. Do not use tobacco or illicit drugs. Get enough sleep and rest. Get physical exercise. And some of the practical ways to relax your body often by doing things that work for you. Take deep breaths, stretches, meditate, wash your face and hands, or engage in pleasurable hobbies. Pace yourself between stressful activities and do a fun thing after a hard task. Use time off to relax, eat a good meal, read, listen to music, take a bath, or talk to the family. Talk about your feelings to loved ones and friends often. And these are important things. Pay attention to your body, feelings, and your spirit. Recognize and heed early warning signs of stress. Recognize how your own past experience affects your way of thinking and feeling about this event. And think of how you handle your thoughts, emotion, behavior, and so forth to prevent this. It's also important for you to take time to renew your spirit through meditation, prayer, or helping others in need. Connect with others who may be also experiencing stress about the outbreak and talk about your feelings about the virus. Also share reliable health information. So these are some of the things that you can do. Also, I just want to touch quickly because there is also a population that the children, how do you talk to children? It's important for you to talk to your children and give them and have factual and age-appropriate information about the potential seriousness of the disease and have concrete instruction about how they can alleviate their fears and giving them sense of some control. So remain calm and reassuring. Children will react and follow your verbal and nonverbal reactions. What to say and do about coronavirus, current prevention efforts, and related events can either increase or decrease your children's anxiety. If true, emphasize to your children that they and your family are fine. Remind them that you and your adults at their school are doing everything to keep them safe and healthy. Let your children talk about their feelings and help reframe their concerns into appropriate perspective. Make yourself available. Children may need extra attention from you and may want to talk about their concerns, fears, and questions. It is important that they know they have someone who will listen to them, make time for them, tell them you love them, and give them plenty of affection. Very important. Avoid excessive blaming. When tensions are high, sometimes we try to blame someone. It is important to avoid stereotyping any one group of people as responsible for the virus. This could lead to bullying and negative comments in your child. Be aware of any comments that other adults are having around your family. You may have to explain what comments mean if they're different than the values that you have at home. Monitor television viewing and social media. Limit television viewing or access to information on the internet through social media.
Try to avoid watching or listening to information that might be upsetting when your children are present. Speak to your child about how many stories about COVID-19 on the internet may be based on rumors and inaccurate information. These are important things for us to practice.
Thank you.
Also, I just want to say that you also may want to set up new rules and teach your children how to practice those new rules, hand washing and so forth.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thomas, for your intervention. Dr. Oswald Thomas, a therapist on the line. Dr. Douglas, we'll now open the phone lines. The number to call, 466-5977. The number to call is 466-5977. We're just reminding you that you're listening to a special edition of Ask the Leader, which looks at the impact of COVID-19 on the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Good evening.
Good evening to everybody in the panel. Listen to you guys speaking about this COVID-19. I don't think we understand. Well, not we. I don't think our government understands the seriousness of what is going on in this place. This thing is serious, Mr. Williams. It is stressful. You know why it is stressful? Because we don't know if we get it, if we're going to survive. Yes, I listen to some of the doctors. But how do we know what is our problem? You're saying if you got high pressure, you got this, you got that. How would the person know? This is what making this is so difficult. Wash your hands. I understand all what we're saying. But is our government serious? I listen to Dr. Drew pleading, asking for help. Why Dr. Drew cannot be a part of the setup? It's a crisis, Timothy Harris. Guys, this thing is a crisis. Even me, if I can do anything to help, I will love to. Because it's not about us. We have our children's future, and we are playing with it, Mr. Williams. Listen to these guys. Are our government serious? Why we don't have our best people at some of these press conferences with the government? It's not PAM, Labour, UPP, NRP, and these kind of foolishness. This is very serious, Mr. Douglas. I mean, Mr. Williams and you guys there. It is stressful. Because I don't know where I stand. I don't know. I'm out in the field. What about the other people? What about my good friends at the airport? We don't know. But yet we're playing in this country. We are playing. You telling me that Dr. Judah wanted to have something last night and they will refuse, Mr. Williams? Is this kind of time? Why, Timothy? What people do in this country? This is a serious thing. And I don't care in the politics. Because I don't know where I stand. I don't know where my son stands. I don't know where the country stands. Plane is coming and plane is going. And Timothy cannot say to himself, let us get all our legal minds and everybody, all the best doctors and everybody together to help fight this crisis. Listen to your doctors we are speaking tonight. Well, you can't be at the same table with Timothy and everybody else. Come on, people, man. Let us put our country, our people first. Timothy's time and place for everything. And it's certain. We need to get serious, guys. The question I want to ask, if somebody gets it, can they get it again? I mean, there's so much questions. If somebody...
To be answered by Dr. Morton. And also, we'll also ask, because I think you touched on it, Curtis, what can businesses do to prepare their workspaces and workers, Dr. Morton?
Okay, so thus far people have confirmed that you can get it again. Some people that got it and that had recovered and tested negative and were put back out and were evaluated again. A few of them did come back positive again. So because of that, we know that you can get infected by it or affected by it more than once. How the immune system works, though, is that usually when you get infected by something, the first time is the worst. And after the body becomes accustomed to it, if you want to call it that. The secondary or tertiary, if you want to call it that, infections, they're not as bad as the first one. But with the coronavirus, what it means is that your ability to infect other people is continuing. That's the bad part about it. So your quarantine starts over and all these things start over again. And because it's so new, we don't have the information to know how long would the quarantine be for the second time, etc. So the research is still ongoing. In terms of the workplace, the workspaces, there are multiple things that they can do to prepare themselves and to prepare their workers. In many countries, what has occurred is that in the bulk of workspaces, they've just decided to suspend it. And those are countries that have had confirmed cases. It usually starts off with the high-risk industries and high-risk areas. Those are, to be honest, when there's any kind of contagious illness out there with mannerisms like this one, the place in which the most spread happens is in schools. Just because children and schools, they're just hotbeds for spreading things like this. With this particular disease, there's been a good thing in that many people were worried about their children and their children's safety. Even though this virus has killed more than 6,000 plus people worldwide, it has not killed a single soul on the planet that's under the age of 10 thus far. And the rate at which children have been even symptomatic has been very low. But even though that's the case, children are testing positive for it, which means that they do have the potential to spread it to other persons. So that means that schools are still hotbeds for spreading the disease, for the disease to then go out into communities. So one of the first places that usually get suspended when, one of the first things that happens when there's a confirmed thing is they say, okay, just keep everybody at home. If you go to school, keep them at home. That brings up the trouble of who's going to watch the children at home. So because of that, the ripple effect is that usually they suspend the bulk of work and jobs, etc. And also, those workspaces could also be places in which the disease could spread. If you are in a workspace that does not choose to send the workers home for whatever reasons they may have, if it's not a government stipulation, it would be about ensuring that the workspace is clean. So it's about wiping down as many surfaces as you can, usually not only at the end of the day and at the start of the day, but at key times during the day, always ensuring that when your workplace, if you have an office in St. Kitts, it should have proper bathroom and sanitation stuff, otherwise you wouldn't get your environmental license. So I'm assuming that those are in place already. So you have to ensure that everything's working and is up to date, that you have your soap, etc. And that you have the soap and stuff available. Paper towels, if you have a paper towel dispenser, that's nice. I think to use a towel over and over again may not be the best suggestion. If anyone in the workplace has a cough and they're just starting to show symptoms, they should be asked to stay home for now for the sake of safety, so that they don't spread it. And if you're going to cough, if it's a light cough and you're not sure what's going on, still cough into your elbow, don't cough on your hand. And as Dr. Wilson said, we have to change the ways in which we greet each other. We don't have to be touching each other that much at this point in time. And just those tips, and the workplace can remain a safe place.
Thank you very much, Dr. Morton. Let us go back to the phone lines and we welcome our next caller. Good evening. Ask the leader.
Yes, good evening. My question is, somebody asked Dr. Joe, I think it was last night, about if he reached out to the chief medical officer. He could have done that, but my take on it is, I think the chief medical officer, the Ministry of Health, knows how many doctors that are in St. Kitts. And it is the duty of the Ministry of Health and the chief medical officer to reach out to every doctor in the states of St. Kitts and Nevis. Have a talk with them, if not in a conference, by telephone, and asking them to join together, every one of them, to be together in helping with this coronavirus. Me, I'm hypertensive, I'm diabetic, and I'm a cancer survivor. And what really is getting me is to know how many young people are asthmatic, how many children, babies are born and are asthmatic. And my concern is if any of those people had to get the coronavirus, I know when the weather is cool, when they have smoke or different smell in the air according like perfume and things, people get asthma attack. And it's difficult for them to breathe. And if they don't have ventilators and their little pump to help them out, I think for us this is really a big, big, big crisis in this place. But I pray to God we don't have a case, and I pray to God that we would never get one in our federation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Just let me comment. I don't believe that there is any conflict whatsoever between Dr. Drew and the Chief Medical Officer. Likewise, I don't think that there is any conflict between Dr. Drew and the government medical personnel and government medical institutions. I think that all that has been happening is Dr. Drew has been speaking out and saying that we needed to be ready, need to ensure that we are aware that there are friendly countries to whom we can turn in order to receive the appropriate specialist assistance and support. For example, Cuba and Taiwan. I don't think he's doing it within the context of any conflict whatsoever. I think he's just being his passion for medicine, his passion for caring for people, that he's asking as many people as possible to become aware of what is happening and for us to be appropriately prepared. I think I want to commend in particular Dr. Joe for taking a very early and firm stance as to how we can begin to prepare ourselves and our country for this serious pandemic that is confronting the entire world.
As well as to collaborate as we go back to the phone lines. Good evening, caller. Ask the leader.
Good evening, Erasmus. My name is Earl Clark. I've just heard the gentleman from the village, and I totally agree with him. It is time for Dr. Harris to realize that he's the Prime Minister of the whole Federation. And if there's a crisis, he must reach out and touch and draw together all the people in their federation who can assist the crisis. But he's playing the role of a little child, because he has not reached out to Dr. Drew. Dr. Drew came from Germany, and he informed the whole federation about what is happening in Germany to counter this disease. But Dr. Harris hasn't done anything. You haven't heard any updates regularly. And when you go on Al Jazeera and BBC, you are hearing the leaders updating the residents regularly. I just heard there somebody came in to must be advised the government, and the man just walked through. What about those small yachts which come in and anchor down by the Aristang Bay Road? What if they come ashore and they're contaminated? What would happen to us? We have a small country with a small population, and soon we could be wiped out. I want to implore Dr. Harris to stop acting the role of a little child, a spoiled child, and reach out in the interest of the citizens of this country to embrace everybody so that we can fight this dreaded disease and overcome it. Thank you very much.
Very much. We have someone who is asking, please address the wearing of gloves in public by public individuals, especially cashiers in supermarkets and pharmacies. You want to address that?
Okay, no problem.
Dr. Wilson?
Yes, I mentioned earlier in my presentation that I've noted that some persons are wearing, these latex gloves and so forth. This person is asking specifically about supermarkets and pharmacies and so forth. The wearing of gloves, what this does is protect the person who has them on. It's not protecting the rest of the population, the rest of the public. A better thing to do would be to have hand sanitizer, and after you would have served each individual, you simply sanitize again, because it's a common sense thing. If you touch my products, and let's just say COVID-19 is sitting on my products, and you touch them in your gloves, well then when you touch the next person's products, you put it on their products.
I saw those questions being asked.
It is a very common sense thing. I said it some days ago in a supermarket, and I think that some of the cashiers recognized and they may have taken it to their superiors and so forth. And I've seen a change. So I just want to say, going forward, you have to think about it, because it's very logical and it's a very common sense thing. If you wear gloves, you protect yourself. You're not protecting your clients. You're only protecting yourself. So you should do it for the protection of everyone. Okay? I hope that shed some light.
Dr. Morton, what advice do you have for visitors to our hospitals? Let's go take this important call. Good evening, caller.
Yes, good evening. I want to say good evening to the panelists there. Good evening to Erasmus. What I want to ask is, what is the plans, the doctors, what is the plans for...
We have lost connection. You'll call back. Dr. Morton?
Repeat the question, please.
What advice do you have for visitors to our hospitals?
As in anyone that
is back.
Okay, let's go back. Good evening, Steve. Hello.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes. Good evening, caller.
Good evening to everyone. Good evening. Hello?
Ask your question, caller.
Yes. I'm concerned about the doctors, because, everybody talking about the general public, which includes that, but specifically I'm concerned about the doctors, because, they are the one in times like this that everybody depending on for information and for relief and so on. And my question is that, Doc, what you all are doing in terms of your office? Remember, one can come in, not showing symptoms, he or she come for a different illness, and they might have the virus. They sit in your chair, and they touch it, they put their hand in the mouth out, whatever, and they touch the chair get the virus on it, and another patient comes in, sit in that chair. You all normally sanitize your office as regular as possible, and as a patient go out, you all sanitize the chairs and what's not, also the table, what you call it, the bed and so on, the patient lays on in order to check them. But like I said, I'm really concerned about you all. You all are doing a good job in general, and you all keep up the good works. My prayer and my passion and everything is with you all. Well, good night.
Okay, let me say it should be done. What the caller was speaking about is the sanitization of the healthcare facilities, including offices, waiting areas in particular. And what should really happen, especially now, the type of material used for chairs and so forth, like for instance at the HCMD clinic we use leather because it was selected simply because it's easier to clean. It's not just with the coronavirus, but once we detect a patient that's carrying a particular germ, especially the skin illness and so forth, we generally take the chair out of circulation for a short while after the patient has left, and it is sterilized in the back and put back into circulation. We try not to do it in a way such that other persons may, there might be
begin to murmur.
People might begin to murmur. So we take it out and it is clean, and then maybe an hour later or so, it might go back into its position. But yes, at intervals, one of the things that is done presently at HCMD, we do Lysol the air approximately every hour, just because we know that some persons might be sitting there coughing and so forth. I don't think at this point in time anyone is offended by it. People are actually happy to see us doing it. And like I say, sometimes we go out with the infrared temperature guns, and especially if the office becomes full, and we just check everyone's temperature just to make sure that no one is sitting around with a fever and so forth. This is something which I imagine should be happening at JNF Boxing, etc. We have large numbers of patients in waiting. So yes, I can speak to myself. We do it, and I suspect that, like I said, I've been talking about common sense all night. It should be a common sense thing to do. Okay.
We'll just hear from Dr. Morton on the question.
I was just adding that they also should call before. That's the most important.
Yes, we did say persons who would have certain symptoms and so forth, or suspect that they have been exposed, we're encouraging them to call before they actually show. As a matter of fact, in some instances, we have been going to persons just because they think that they might have something and so forth. And, so far, so good. We have not had any confirmed cases. But yes, some people have actually called.
The visitors to the hospitals.
Oh, I was just trying to confirm. You mean a visitor to St. Kitts?
What advice?
Anyone coming to the hospital?
Anyone coming.
Okay, if anyone is coming to the hospital, if they're coming and they have the same symptoms mentioned, the fever and the coughing, like I said before, just bear in mind that it's something that could be highly contagious. Just make sure that the medical staff is aware wherever you're seeking the medical care, whether it's JNF Box and Mary Charles. Call before such that we can be prepared, so that we can put you in a particular area to test. If you're somebody that's coming to JNF and you don't have one of those symptoms, just two things. One is that you shouldn't panic yourself too much. If you're waiting, just wait with caution, I guess, and you can look around and see if there's anyone that looks as though they might still be coughing or they might still not be following protocol. In a time like this, you don't have to be loud and raucous and make a scene, but you can simply try to inform the medical staff that there's somebody in the waiting room that seems to have a persistent cough or consistent cough, and you think that that person needs to either be dealt with separately or be dealt with quickly, such that the entire room doesn't become basically contaminated. And also, if they get the heads up, they might be able to get people to move a bit, and then maybe they could sterilize the area before people can go back there. It's just to note that the staff of the hospitals, they are aware of the seriousness of it, and everyone's trying their hardest to do their part with the resources available, and it's just up to the general public to also try their hardest to do their part as well.
Just one other question. The information, which are the samples which have been taken from persons, are they tested here alone, or are they sent to CARFA?
They tested both. There's both testing here at CARFA. CARFA is the confirmatory.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we've basically come to the end of this very important information, very important topic, the impact of COVID-19 on the Federation of St. Kitts and the Nevis, special edition of Ask the Leader today. And of course, we invite the Right Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas to close it out, to make his closing statement.
Right. Thank you, Rasmus. I think that I'd like to basically respond to that caller who seemed to be concerned that the entire medical staff, or medical fraternity, I should say, may not necessarily be involved. And that is why this morning or this afternoon, when I made my statement to the nation, I indicated that the government should really take a whole of government and whole of society approach by establishing what has been described as a national COVID-19 task force. which obviously then would be inclusive of not only the government sector, public sector, but also the private sector and all of our social partners, inclusive, of course, of civil society and others. We must never forget at this time the critical role that the faith-based organization can play in this moment of possibly pending crisis. We believe that those of us who in particular would have become anxious, as have been described by Dr. Thomas earlier, and giving his own therapeutic and comforting advice, let us feel free, of course, to call upon our God and remember to call for prayers, whether at the individual or at the family or at the national level, so that our people can be impacted with the necessary support of the faith-based organizations that would bring the calmness and the approach that is without panic to the citizens of our country. This is really a very, very serious time. It is a time when we are still unaware of how we will be impacted. But the good thing about it is that we have started the dialogue and the discussion that is going to be absolutely necessary for those of us who may not be informed and properly educated about this coronavirus, COVID-19. I want to end in particular by asking the people whom I have represented in the parliament of this country for 31 years, those in constituency number 6, who may not have been in tune to this program, to be aware that this is all for you and for the nation on a whole. I hope that you have made use of the program, you've listened attentively, you are better informed, and you are better prepared for the after effects of this virus visiting us here in St. Kitts and Nevis and creating illness described as the coronavirus COVID-19. May God bless you as you go to your homes. And I want to thank the panelists for so ably giving us of their time, their expertise, their knowledge, and their training to make this place a better place in the event there is a crisis. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the members of the panel. We invite you to join us tomorrow at 12 noon for a rebroadcast on Kyssfm 102.5 FM at 12 noon. Goodbye.